Why use aerobic compost tea? Aerobic compost tea enhances the populations of microbes in the soil that are busy at work decomposing organic material and making nutrients available to plant roots. Additionally, compost tea coats plant leaves and stems in a biofilm that can keep away pests and disease by decreasing the amount of habitat available for harmful organisms to exist. Depending on how your compost tea is made, it will contain either aerobic or anaerobic microorganisms. Aerated or oxygenated compost tea promotes aerobic microbes, which will persist in the environment in the soil around plants. Alternatively, the microorganisms that exist in anaerobic compost tea do not play as large a role in nutrient cycling in the area around plant roots and will not survive in the aerobic environment. These organisms also tend to be human pathogens. Using compost tea benefits the school garden by reducing the need to purchase fertilizers from outside sources, thus decreasing economic costs. It also reduces consequences to the environment by providing a good waste reduction technique and aiding in nutrient cycling, as discussed in the video on how to compost. What goes into aerobic compost tea? To make compost tea, you will want to use either rainwater or dechlorinated tap water. Regular tap water is chlorinated and will kill any microbes that are present in the compost. Tap water can be dechlorinated by standing it in an open bucket overnight or by oxygenating with a bubbler for half an hour. Optimally, you should use finished compost or compost that has gone through all the stages of decomposition, which I've described in previous video. Some sort of efficient food source for the microbes can be added, including seaweed, parts of fruit, simple sugars, or greens. You can use weeds from the garden as a green food source as well. Weeds such as comfrey, dandelion, stinging nettle, clover, chickweed, lamb's quarter, horsetail, and morning glory are high in particular nutrients which can be useful to the growth of garden plants. You can find out more about the uses of weed species in my video on weed identification. Oxygen is, of course, the other important component of aerobic compost tea. Aerobic compost tea making method. To make the compost tea bag, you will need to fill a nylon with a handful of pebbles to weigh it down and then add the compost and greens. The more variety of material in the compost tea bag, the higher the diversity of organisms present in the compost tea. Diversity is important to the health of the garden as it creates many different interactions between organisms. The compost in the nylon should add to about 1 liter altogether. The nylon can be tied so it hangs into the bucket. To make aerobic compost tea, you will need a clean 5-gallon bucket, 4/5 full of chlorine-free water. The diffuser and plastic hose should be arranged at the bottom to provide good airflow throughout the bucket. One end of the hose is attached to the stone filter, and the other to the pump, and the hose is perforated with many holes using a pin. These items can be purchased at any pet shop for about $30. The organisms will grow rapidly in the next couple of days and reach a maximum population at 14 days. Brewing does not need to exceed this time. It is reasonable to brew the tea for at least 1 week, but longer brewing, up to 2 weeks, increase the microbe populations even more. Compost tea observations. Aerated compost tea should not smell foul or have a film on the surface. It should smell earthy, have foam on the surface, and be clear enough to see to the bottom of the bucket. When and how to use aerobic compost tea. Your freshly brewed compost tea should be diluted to a 1:4 ratio with water. The 5-gallon bucket of tea will create 20 gallons, which is enough to cover a mid-sized school garden. A generous amount of diluted tea can be applied until the foliage is covered and the soil is soaked. The tea has a short shelf life of 4 hours, so it should be used as soon as possible after aeration, as it will not keep. Do not use compost tea on any vegetables you wish to harvest in 90 to 120 days. This exaggerated government guideline is to protect consumers on a commercial scale. You may choose to water with compost tea at all times and wash your vegetables well, cook them, or freeze them to sterilize the harvest. Make sure you wash your hands after handling compost tea to avoid any contaminations from bacteria. Experiment and curriculum integration. One possible experiment that can be conducted using your compost tea is carried out in the following way. Have 2 areas where a particular plant grows, for example, a tomato plant. Water one tomato plant with compost tea and the other with regular water. Have the children predict the results of providing compost tea to one plant and not the other, and explain the reason why they might expect these results. Have the children measure the growth of each plant with a ruler and record their data. Also encourage other observations such as leaf color, stem width, and signs of pests. Make a conclusion about the benefits of compost tea to the plant using any results obtained, including ideas on why the experiment did or did not produce the expected results. This experiment integrates prescribed learning outcomes from the processes of science and life science for kindergarten to grade 4, as outlined in the BC school curriculum. Examples of PLOs that are covered include using the 5 senses to make observations, measuring objects and events, describing the basic needs of plants, and analyzing food chains.